Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Aisel Timader from BSET English Review, and for today's discussion, we are going to talk about synthesizing literature. But first, let us define what is synthesis writing. A synthesis paper is a written work that focuses on the relationship between different sources on a topic and identifies key themes in the literature. Each source may have a different viewpoint that supports, adds to, or counters another source. Your job is to discover the main themes, arguments, concepts, ideas, and then put them together into a cohesive whole to show the state of knowledge on a topic. Synthesis is a key part of literature reviews. Without synthesis, a literature review would resemble an annotated bibliography or a list of article summaries. Now let's have the key to synthesizing. First is paraphrase your sources. Don't use direct quotes. Scientific articles rarely use direct quotes. Instead, sources are paraphrased, which is considered a high level of writing. Using quotes too often can indicate lack of understanding of the original source. And also, direct quotes in scientific papers are really only needed if the exact phrasing of the original sentence matters, such as when citing laws. Be careful not to plagiarize or misinterpret or mispresent the original meaning of an author's work. Second, use linking verbs to make connections between sources. Literature reviews often employs the use of a series of signaling words that shows agreement, disagreement, criticism, or conclusive analysis in literature. A sample of this word is provided by Jason, Madison, and Daisy 2011. For similar options, you can use similar, equally, likewise, and in the same way. For strengthening words or words that strengthen an argument, you can use in addition, besides, to, moreover, furthermore, it is different, not only, and but also. For alternative words or words that argue against something, you can use others argue that, then give a reference source for the others. Alternatively, and it might or it could be argued that. For rebuttal words, you can use however, on the other hand, nonetheless, and notwithstanding. For contrast or contradict words, you can use although, conversely, by contrast, on the one hand, and on the other hand. For results and consequences, you can use as a result, as a consequence, hence, thus, consequently, and because of this. And lastly, for concluding words, you can use therefore, in conclusion, thus, and we can see that. Linking or signaling verbs are used to explicitly tie sources together in different ways. If you don't use linking verbs in your paper, you are likely not synthesizing. Third, make sure to include your own ideas. A synthesis paper is more than the sum of its parts. Your ideas or your own ideas are the glue between the sources. A clear synthesis or argument should emerge supported by multiple sources of evidence. For example, as you can see here, the writer has included multiple resources in the paragraph, and also the writer has included an analysis of the topic and added something to the scholarly conversation. And lastly is to organize your sources. Don't write a series of article summaries because each paragraph or section of the paper should discuss a particular theme and synthesize multiple sources as evidence. It is possible that not every article will address every theme. You can organize your sources by theme or concept, and you can use synthesis matrix that will be discussed later on in organizing your sources. Now, let's take a look at examples of a good and a bad synthesis. So this is the first example of synthesis. This is an example of a good synthesis because it shows that multiple sources are having conversation on the topic and citing several articles at a time indicates that those articles have made similar points. Also, the first sentence makes the entire point of the paragraph, which is during the 1960s to 1980s, the principal ship had not yet experienced the leadership revolution experienced in other areas of business. And also, it is clear that this paragraph is a part of a larger story. According to Joe Schmoo, author of A Chocolate, chocolate comes to us from South America where it was once consumed as a bitter hot beverage. The beverage quickly gained favor in Europe. Ima Goodbar points out Queen Isabella had an elaborate hot chocolate set that she used on important state occasions. Chocolate is enjoyed all over the world. This is an example of a bad synthesis because it uses direct quotes to tell the story rather than through paraphrasing and interpretation, and sources are disconnected and there are no linking verbs. So this is the next example of a synthesis. In the past, opponents of immigration raised economic, racial, religious, and nationalistic objections or questions about large-scale immigration to the United States. Today, however, experts tell us that the opposition to immigration is expressed almost exclusively in economic terms. For example, Dan Lacey, a workplace consultant, business journalist, and editor, found that research of immigration attitudes shows that the fear that some Americans have of losing their jobs to immigrants is the main reason for opposition to immigration today. In the same economic vein, Thomas Muller, an economist with the Urban Institute, points out the widespread concern among Americans that the new immigrants use welfare and other public aid programs to such an extent that they are a financial burden on government and therefore a financial burden on taxpayers. With these two reasons expressly conveyed, it is easy to see that the most objection to immigration now fall under the economic realm. As you can see, the praise experts tells us shows that the author is combining the ideas of experts about opposition to immigration and then giving us example. Also notice how the italicized portion traces the coherence in the sources expressed by the repeated keywords that related to economic objections or questions. This is important when there are two different sources. They are made to work together to form a coherent discussion of the idea expressed in the topic sentence through the efforts of a third independent writer. And yes, it is your job to be that third synthesizing writer or third independent writer. So this is an example of a good synthesis because it uses linking words and phrases to connect sources to each other. For example, in the same economic vein, in the past, and the topic sentence, for example. It also used paraphrasing instead of direct quotes, and as you can see, the paragraph makes an argument and it is clear that it is a part of a larger story on this topic. And that's all for today. I hope you've learned something. Thank you for listening and have a great day.